At an event, my wife mocked my failing business and left for her boss. I didn't tell her, I just sold my patent for $173 million. When she and her lawyer tried to sue me, the judge destroyed them. Look, I'm not saying I wanted my marriage to implode in front of 50 strangers wearing rental tuxedos and knockoff Lubout tants. But if it had to happen, at least the appetizers were decent. The Downtown Children's Foundation Gala. Because nothing says I care about underprivileged youth quite like dropping $300 a plate to eat salmon that tastes like it was seasoned with good intentions and tax write-offs. I'm standing there in my department store suit. The one Leia said made me look approachable, which I'm pretty sure is wife code for poor but trying. Watching her work the room like she's campaigning for governor of Fake Laugh County. Her red dress, the sparkly one that cost more than my first car, catches every light in the ballroom, which I'm convinced was her entire strategy. Be seen, be remembered. Be anything except associated with the guy nursing ginger ale at table 7 because the wine tastes like somebody's regret fermented in a gym sock. That's when it happens. Graham Steele, her boss, her mentor, her walking LinkedIn post made flesh, leans back in his chair with that smile, rich people, where when they're about to say something they think is hilarious. You know the smile, the one that screams, I haven't faced real consequences since 2003. He's got this whole silver fox thing going on, complete with the kind of watch that costs more than most people's student loans. And he's holding court at our table like he personally funded the entire charity by cashing in his spare yacht. Eel is sitting beside him close enough that I'm starting to wonder if there's a corporate team building exercise I miss that involves aggressive personal space invasion. Someone at the table, I think it's Denise from accounting, but honestly, everyone in marketing looks the same after the third forced smile, asks me how my business is going. Before I can answer, before I can even formulate the words that would politely indicate my company exists and functions like a normal goddamn enterprise, Leia jumps in. And she doesn't just jump in, she cannonballs into the conversation with the confidence of someone who's been workshopping this bit. Oh, Miles is still tinkering with his little tech dream. She says, her laugh bright enough to signal aircraft. She touches Graham's arm and yeah, I notice I'm not blind and continues, poor guy doesn't realize his business is drowning faster than a goldfish in Red Bull. The table erupts. I mean, absolutely loses it. Graham's doing that thing where he throws his head back like her joke just wanna pull her. Denise is wiping her eyes. Some dude I've never met is slapping the table. Even the waiter pauses mid-pour to crack a smile, which honestly feels like a betrayal of the service industry code. I take a sip of my water, the fancy kind with cucumber slices floating in it like little life rafts of irony. And I smile. Not a big smile, just enough to indicate I'm a good sport, that I can take a joke. That I'm the kind of guy who doesn't make scenes at charity gall. Inside I'm doing calculations. $173 million. That's $173 million American after taxes sitting in my account as of 3:47 this afternoon when I signed the final wire transfer authorization while Leia was getting her hair done for this exact event. My little tech dream that's apparently drowning. Yeah, Irongate Security just threw at the mother of all life preservers. And that life preserver is made of government contracts and military-grade encryption patents. But I don't say any of this because here's what I've learned about rich people, about successful people, about people who win. They don't announce their victories at the same event where they're being mocked. That's amateur hour. That's what people do in movies right before everything falls apart. Real winners, we smile. We nod. We memorize every single face that laughed. And oh, am I memorizing Denise with her horse laugh and her off-brand Hermes bag, Graham with his hand now definitely too low on my wife's back to qualify as professional mentorship. The random tech bro who I think does something with blockchain because of course he does. Grinning like someone just validated his entire existence. I'm filing away every smirk, every chuckle, every person who thought it was hilarious to watch a man get roasted by his own wife at a children's charity event. The irony isn't lost on me, by the way. We're here to help kids who've got nothing. And these people are getting their entertainment from mocking a guy they think is broke. Real humanitarian energy in this room tonight. Leia's still going, riding the high of her successful burn. I keep telling him, honey, maybe it's time to consider consulting work or teaching, she says, making air quotes with her manicured fingers. But he's stubborn. Thinks his little security camera encryption thing is going to revolutionize the industry. Graham leans in and Jesus, dude, personal space and says, well, we all need dreamers, right? Keeps the rest of us employed when reality hits. More laughter. The waiter's now actively eavesdropping. I'm pretty sure someone at the next table is filming this for their Instagram story with some caption about awkward charity dinner moments. LOL. I take another sip of my fancy cucumber water and think about the email sitting in my phone right now. The one from Elaine Porter, CEO of IronGate, with the subject line, "Congratulations, Mr. Carter." The one that confirms my little security camera encryption thing is now the backbone of digital security infrastructure for half the defense contractors in the Western Hemisphere. Leia catches my eye for just a second. And there's something there. Not guilt. She's way past that, but maybe a flicker of curiosity about why I'm not defending myself. Why I'm just sitting here smiling like an idiot, letting her turn our marriage into a comedy routine for her boss's amusement. I could tell her right now. I could pull out my phone, show her the wire transfer confirmation, watch her face go through all 5 stages of grief in real time while her colleagues try to figure out how to unlaw at their own jokes. It would be spectacular. It would be satisfying. It would be the kind of moment that gets reenacted in divorce court and talked about at future galas when people need a story about karma. But I don't, because that's not how you play this game. You don't show your cards when everyone's still betting against you. You wait, you smile. You let them think they've won. And then when they're absolutely convinced they've got you figured out, when they've committed fully to their narrative about the sad little husband with his failing business, that's when you show them what winning actually looks like. So, I finish my water, excuse myself from the table with a polite nod, and head home alone. Leia staying for the networking portion of the evening, which I'm 90% sure is code for Graham's hotel suite, has a mini bar, and poor judgment. I get back to our apartment. Well, technically her apartment now, since I'm already planning my exit strategy. And I make myself a peanut butter sandwich. Not because I can't afford better. Not because I'm depressed, but because sometimes when you've just sold your company for the kind of money that makes financial advisors weep with joy, you need something simple, something real, something that doesn't come with cucumber slices and passive-aggressive commentary. I sit on the couch eating my sandwich, replaying the entire evening in my head, every laugh, every smirk, every moment my wife chose her boss's validation over her husband's dignity. And I smile. Well, I say to my empty apartment, raising my sandwich like a toast. Guess I'm officially single, but also rich. So, really, I think I'm coming out ahead here. Tomorrow, I'll call Henry Wolf, my lawyer, and the only person who knew about the IronGate deal. Tomorrow, I'll start moving assets, restructuring accounts, and building the kind of legal fortress that makes divorce attorneys retire early. Tomorrow, I'll begin the process of excising Leia from my life with the precision of a surgeon and the pettiness of someone who just got mocked at a charity gala. But tonight, I'm just a guy with a peanut butter sandwich and $173 million worth of vindication waiting in the wings. And honestly, that's enough. Let me take you back to when I wasn't the guy with 173 million reasons to smile. Back when I was just Miles Carter, the idiot with a garage full of circuit boards in a dream that everyone, and I mean everyone, thought was adorable in that he still believes in Santa kind of way. My origin story isn't exactly Marvel material. No radioactive spiders, no dead parents motivating my journey, no mystical training montage in the Himalayas. Just me. A decent laptop I bought refurbished off eBay, a toolbox I inherited from my dad, and an unfortunate tendency to lie awake at 3 a.m. thinking about encryption algorithms while normal people were doing normal things like sleeping or having healthy relationships. Lockwave Systems started in my garage in 2019. And when I say garage, I don't mean some Silicon Valley legend where garage actually means facility funded by venture capitalists. I mean, an actual garage. The kind with oil stains on the concrete, a concerning spider population, and insulation so bad that I coated in a winter jacket from November through March. My first office chair was a folding lawn chair that gave me posture problems. I'm still paying a chiropractor to fix. The business model was simple, almost boring. Encryption modules for small business security cameras. See, everyone was freaking out about Ring doorbells and how they could be hacked. About security footage being accessed by randos in Belarus, about privacy being dead and buried somewhere between Facebook and that time Target predicted a teenager's pregnancy before her parents knew. Small businesses, your mom and pop shops, local gyms, small medical practices, they all had cameras and they all had zero idea how vulnerable they were. So I built something that made their systems actually secure. Not. We promise your data is safe, secure, but you need a quantum computer and the patience of a monk to crack this secure military-grade encryption for people who could barely afford a decent point-of-sale system. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't going to get me on magazine covers or invited to TED Talks, but it worked and it mattered and it paid the bills. Well, most of the bills. Sometimes when clients actually paid on time, which was about as frequent as honest politicians. That's where I was when I met Leia. Small Tech Expo 2020, right before the world decided to shut down and make Zuma a verb. She was working the marketing booth for some startup that sold organic dog food or sustainable yoga mats or whatever middle-class guilt was trending that quarter. I was demonstrating my encryption software to absolutely nobody because my booth was between the bathrooms and the emergency exit. Prime real estate for being ignored. She walked over during a lull, probably because she was bored and I looked harmless. Dark hair, sharp eyes, smile that could sell ice to Eskimos or convince you that cryptocurrency was a sound investment strategy. We started talking. She asked what I did. I explained the whole security camera encryption thing, expecting her eyes to glaze over like everyone else's did when I got technical, but she didn't glaze over. She leaned in. Asked questions. Good questions, too. Not that I'm pretending to care kind. She understood the business potential before I did. Honestly, told me I was thinking too small, that I should be pitching to corporate clients, that my Ashuk small business routine was leaving millions on the table. I fell for her right there between the organic dog food and the emergency exit. Sue me, I'm a sucker for anyone who takes my weird little encryption obsession seriously. We dated for 6 months before moving in together. She loved the dreamer thing back then. Called me her brilliant weirdo. Brought coffee to the garage while I worked. Posted Instagram stories about supporting your partner's hustle with pictures of my workspace that she'd artfully arranged to look charmingly chaotic instead of just chaotic. The proposal happened in that same garage. Not because I'm unromantic. Okay, maybe a little, but because that's where we'd spend our best moments. I just landed my first major contract, $30,000 from a regional bank chain. I was flying high, convinced I'd made it, that this was the beginning of something huge. I proposed with a ring I'd saved 6 months to buy. Nothing fancy, but honest. She said yes. She cried. She told me she believed in us, in me, in our future. And for a while, she meant it. I think she actually meant it. The wedding was small. Her parents didn't quite know what to make of me. The guy who worked in a garage and talked about encryption like it was poetry. My mom loved her immediately, which should have been a red flag because my mom loves everyone, including the Jehovah's Witnesses who show up quarterly to discuss salvation. We honeymooned in Sedona because it was cheap and beautiful, and neither of us had ever seen red rocks that made you question your life choices in a good way. Year 1 of marriage was decent. Lockwave was growing, not exploding, but growing. I hired my first employee, a kid named Marcus, who was better at code than I was and willing to work for equity and pizza. Layat got promoted to senior marketing associate at some firm downtown. We had date nights. We laughed. We talked about maybe buying a house, having kids someday, doing all the things people do when they think they've figured out the formula. Year 2, things shifted. Subtle at first, like a car alignment that's slightly off, but you don't notice until you've been driving crooked for months. Ila's job became more demanding. She started working later, bringing stress home like a contagious disease. I was working crazy hours too, chasing contracts, debugging code, trying to scale a business with the resources of a lemonade stand. We started existing in the same space instead of sharing it. She'd come home, pour wine, complain about her boss, Graham, the same Graham who'd eventually become her emotional affair partner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'd listen, nod, offer solutions that she didn't want because she wasn't looking for solutions. She was looking for validation that her problems were the worst problems anyone had ever had. My business became the punching bag. When money was tight, it was because I wasn't hustling hard enough. When I landed a contract, it was nice, but when does it become real money? When I explained the long-term strategy, the patent applications, the potential for government contracts, she'd pat my hand like I was a kid who just explained his plan to become an astronaut cowboy. Year 3 was when I believe in you became, why can't you be more like Graham? Graham Steele, her boss, her mentor, the walking embodiment of everything I apparently wasn't. Successful, polished, corporate, the kind of guy who says synergy without irony and thinks a good weekend is playing golf with clients. He drove a Tesla before they were cool and wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly revenue. At first, it was professional admiration. Graham taught me this presentation technique. Graham says I have real potential. Fine, normal, healthy, even. Everyone needs mentors. But then it became personal. Graham thinks we should renovate the apartment. Graham's wife has this meal delivery service she loves. Graham says young marriages struggle when there's income disparity. I'm not an idiot. I saw where this was heading. The late meetings, the new perfume, the way she'd light up when her phone buzzed with his name, the receipts for dinners at restaurants that apparently required reservations made by someone's assistant because they were too exclusive for normal humans to access. When I'd bring it up gently, carefully like I was diffusing a bomb made of insecurity and denial, she'd flip it on me. You're being paranoid. Maybe if you focused on your business instead of stalking my credit card statements, we'd be in a better position. Graham is married, Miles. Happily married. Stop projecting your inadequacies onto my professional relationships. So, I stopped bringing it up, not because I believed her, but because I realized something important. I didn't care anymore. Not in the way you're supposed to care when your marriage is circling the drain. I cared in the analytical way. I cared about debugging code. This relationship has a fundamental flaw. The architecture is compromised. Time to rebuild from scratch. That's when I called Henry Wolf. Henry and I went to college together back when we were both broke and idealistic and convinced we'd change the world through sheer force of will and coffee consumption. He went to law school. I went into tech. We stayed friends because we both had a healthy appreciation for cynicism and bourbon. Henry's the guy who says things like, marriage is a contract where one party agrees to be disappointed and the other agrees to be blamed. He's been divorced twice, which either makes him the worst person to take relationship advice from or the most qualified, depending on your perspective. I met him at his office downtown, a place with leather furniture and law books that probably cost more than they should because lawyers love expensive things that make them look smart. I told him everything. The distance, the suspicion, the Graham situation, the fact that my business was about to explode in ways Leia couldn't imagine. Henry leaned back in his chair, poured 2 glasses of bourbon, even though it was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, and said, "So, you want to divorce her before she figures out you're about to be obscenely wealthy?" "I want to protect what I've built," I corrected. "Same thing," he grinned. "I love it. Let's burn this thing down legally and precisely." We spent the next 3 months building a fortress, moved Lockwave ownership to an offshore trust, filed patents under corporate entities Leia didn't know existed, restructured everything so that when the Argate deal went through, it would be invisible to anyone not looking at the right paperwork. It was beautiful, surgical, the kind of legal work that made Henry actually smile, which was concerning because Henry didn't smile unless someone was about to get magnificently screwed by contract law. "You know what the best part is?" Henry said one night reviewing documents. "She's going to leave you thinking she's trading up and you're going to let her think that right up until she Googles you 6 months later." I raised my glass to delayed gratification to revenge served so cold it's got freezer burn. Henry countered. We drank to that, to patience, to planning. To the beautiful petty satisfaction of letting someone underestimate you right up until the moment they realize they've made a catastrophic error in judgment. Back in the garage, my real office now upgraded but still humble. I worked. Marcus and I pulled 18-hour days refining the encryption protocols that would eventually catch Irongate's attention. We built something beautiful, something that actually mattered. And every night, I'd come home to Leia, who'd barely look up from her phone, who'd ask about my day in that tone that meant she wasn't actually listening, who'd mention Graham at least 5 times before dinner. I'd smile, nod, play the role of the struggling husband with the cute little business that was definitely absolutely certainly going nowhere. And I'd think, just wait, sweetheart. Just wait. The thing about watching your marriage die in slow motion is that you start noticing all the little details you missed when you were too busy, actually trying to make it work. Like how Ela stopped asking about my day and started making statements about hers. Or how we became I in every sentence that mattered, or how her entire personality got swallowed whole by her job until I wasn't married to a person anymore. I was married to a LinkedIn profile that occasionally slept in my bed. It started innocently enough, the way most disasters do. She'd come home from work buzzing with energy, talking about campaigns and demographics and some viral post they'd created for a client that sold overpriced water bottles to people who think hydration is a personality trait. I'd listen genuinely interested at first because I loved seeing her passionate about something. That's what you do when you love someone, right? You care about the things they care about, even when those things are objectively boring to everyone else on the planet. But somewhere between year 2 and year 3, her job stopped being something she did and became something she was. Every conversation circled back to the office like we were stuck in some corporate gravity. Well, I'd mention maybe taking a weekend trip and she'd launch into how Graham, always Graham, had this philosophy about work-life balance being a myth perpetuated by people who weren't serious about success. Graham says the most successful people don't clock out at 5, she'd tell me. Scrolling through her phone while I tried to have an actual conversation. They're always on, always thinking about the next move. I'd nod, shoving food around my plate, thinking about how Graham was probably always on with his wife, too. And look how well that was working out for him. The guy was on his second marriage and looked like he survived on scotch and the tears of interns. But sure, let's take life advice from him. The name dropping became pathological. Graham thinks my presentation skills are elite. Graham says I should start my own agency someday. Graham believes I'm wasted in my current role. It was like she'd joined a cult, except instead of a charismatic leader promising enlightenment, she'd found a middle-aged executive promising career advancement and validation. If Graham thought she should jump off a bridge, she'd ask if there'd be cameras and whether the lighting would be good for her personal brand. I started keeping a mental tally of how many times she mentioned him per day on average. 17. 17 times my wife would bring up her boss in casual conversation. That's more than most people mention their own spouse. I mentioned it once jokingly during dinner. You know, babe, I'm starting to think Graham lives rentree in your head. She didn't even look up from her phone. That's not funny, Miles. Graham is my mentor. He's invested in my success. Maybe if you had someone investing in yours, you'd understand. And there it was. The shift from we're building our future together to you're dragging me down. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. It was death by 1,000 corporate buzzwords. I threw myself into work because what else was I going to do? Sit around and watch my wife emotionally affair her way up the corporate ladder. Lockwave was getting traction, real traction with government contractors and security firms. I was filing patents, refining algorithms, building something that actually mattered in a world where most tech was just shinier versions of things we didn't need. But Leia couldn't see it or wouldn't to her. I was still the guy tinkering in a garage while she was conquering the marketing world, one synergistic paradigm shift at a time. The late-night strategy calls started around month 8 of year 3. She'd take her phone into the bedroom, close the door, and I'd hear her laughing, actually laughing at whatever Graham was saying. The same woman who'd respond to my jokes with a courtesy smile was giggling like a teenager on the other side of that door. I'm not proud of this, but yeah, I checked the phone records. Sue me, when your wife is spending more time talking to her boss at 11 p.m. than she spends talking to you during daylight hours, you get curious. 2-hour calls, 3-hour calls, one memorable night, a 4.5-hour marathon that she later explained was crisis management for a client launch. Right? Because nothing says crisis management like whispering and giggling at midnight. The perfume changed, too. She'd always worn this jasmine scent I love, the one she was wearing when we met. Then suddenly, she's coming home smelling like something called Noir that probably costs more per ounce than my car payment. When I asked about it, she said Graham's wife recommended it. Of course, she did. I'm sure Graham's wife was thrilled to be helping my wife smell good for her husband. That's just good friendship right there. The restaurant receipts were almost comical in their obviosity. Maestro's, the Capitol Grill, some place called Uchi that apparently required reservations 6 weeks in advance and served fish that cost more than reasonable fish should cost. Client dinners, she'd explain, waving her hand dismissively. Part of the job. Funny, I'd say. I don't remember client dinners requiring perfume changes and new lingerie. Her eyes would flash with that particular anger people get when they're caught, but not quite ready to admit it. Are you seriously going through my drawers now? This is exactly why we're struggling, Miles. You're paranoid and controlling instead of focusing on fixing your own situation. The gaslighting was almost impressive in its consistency. Every concern I raised got flipped into evidence of my inadequacy. Worried about her relationship with Graham. I was insecure about my career. Noticed she was emotionally checked out. I was too needy and couldn't handle her success. Mentioned the late nights and suspicious behavior. I was paranoid and clearly projecting my own failures onto her professional achievements. It was like arguing with a corporate training video on how to deflect accountability. But here's the thing about being gaslit by someone who thinks you're stupid. They get sloppy. Leia started leaving her laptop open, her phone unlocked, her guard down because she was so convinced I was too pathetic to be a threat. She'd lost respect for me so completely that she didn't even bother covering her tracks anymore. I saw the emails, not the smoking gun once. She wasn't that careless, but the tone. Can't wait for our meeting today. Last night was exactly what I needed. You always know how to make me feel valued. Signed with little inside jokes and emoji I'd never seen her use with me. I could have confronted her. Could have printed everything out, thrown it on the table, demanded explanations and apologies and all the dramatic relationship intervention stuff that makes for good television but terrible reality. But I didn't because by that point, I'd already made my decision. This marriage was a sinking ship, and I wasn't going down with it. Instead, I called Henry. We met at his office with bourbon and spreadsheets, my two favorite things when planning the systematic dismantling of a relationship. She's definitely cheating, Henry said, reviewing the phone records. Probably not physically yet. Graham seems like the type who needs plausible deniability, but emotionally, yeah, she's gone. I know, I said. Question is, how do I protect Lockwave when this implodes? Henry grinned. The way lawyers do when they get to use their powers for something entertaining. Oh, buddy, Let me show you how beautiful contract law can be. We restructured everything. Moved Lockwave ownership to an offshore trust that Leia didn't know existed. Filed new patents under corporate entities with names so boring they put insomniacs to sleep. Shifted my assets into accounts that would be invisible during any divorce proceedings. Every move documented, time-stamped, and legal enough to make the IRS weep with joy at my compliance. The Irongate deal was happening. Elaine Porter, their CEO, had reached out after seeing my encryption protocols at a security conference. She wanted to buy not just the technology, but the entire company. The number she threw out made me physically dizzy. $173 million with an M after taxes. When does this close? Henry asked, doing calculations on his legal pad. 3 months, I said. Maybe 4 if their lawyers are thorough. Perfect, Henry leaned back, steepling his fingers like a cartoon villain. That gives us time to make sure when Leia leaves you for Graham. And she will. She'll think she's escaping poverty. Then 6 months later, she'll Google you and realize she traded a lottery ticket for a guy whose idea of foreplay is probably explaining quarterly projections. I laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in months. That's evil. That's justice. Henry corrected. Evil would be contesting the divorce and dragging it out. We're going to let her win. Let her take the apartment, the car, whatever she wants from this version of your life because this version. He gestured around at my worn jeans and off-brand watch. This version is about to stop existing. We toasted to that, to patience, to the long game, to the beautiful, petty satisfaction of letting someone underestimate you so completely that they don't realize they're committing financial suicide. Back home, Lala was on another strategy call, her laughter seeping under the bedroom door like toxic gas. I made myself a sandwich, opened my laptop, and reviewed the latest patent approval for Lockwave's quantum-resistant encryption module. My phone buzzed. Elaine Porter, legal team approved. Moving to final due diligence. This is happening, Miles. Congratulations. I smiled, took a bite of my sandwich, and listened to my wife laugh at another man's jokes in our bedroom. Enjoy it while it lasts, sweetheart, I whispered to the empty kitchen. Because the free trial on this marriage is about to expire and the cancellation fee is going to be spectacular. 3 months, maybe 4. Then everything changes. Then she'd realize that the guy she mocked, the husband she outgrew, the dreamer she'd left behind, he was never behind at all. He was just waiting for her to show her cards before playing his hand. And in poker, as in life, patience beats arrogance every single time. The annual Tech Connect Expo is basically Comic-Con for people who think wearing Patagonia vests is a personality trait. 3 days of networking, which is just a fancy word for pretending you care about strangers' elevator pitches while secretly checking how many LinkedIn connection requests you've accumulated. Normally, I'd rather get a root canal than attend, but this year was special. This year, Leia's firm was handling all the PR and event management, which meant she'd been insufferable for 6 straight weeks leading up to it. This is the biggest event of my career, she'd announced over breakfast one morning, not looking up from her phone, where she was probably texting Graham about synergistic brand alignment or whatever corporate foreplay they were into. Everyone who matters will be there. I need you to come, but don't embarrass me, okay? Don't embarrass her. That was rich coming from the woman who'd spent the last charity gala turning our marriage into a comedy roast for her boss's entertainment. But I smiled, nodded, and said, wouldn't dream of it, babe. Because here's what Leia didn't know. Irongate Security was one of the platinum sponsors of Tech Connect. And Elaine Porter, their CEO, and my soon-to-be favorite person on the planet, had specifically requested a private meeting room at the venue to finalize our deal. Same building, same day, different universe of success. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. I showed up in my nice blazer, the one Leia had picked out 3 years ago, back when she still pretended to care about my appearance and khakis that had seen better days. I looked exactly like what Leia wanted me to look like, the supportive but ultimately irrelevant husband who wouldn't steal her spotlight. A prop, arm candy without the candy. The expo center was packed with the usual suspects. Tech brothers in expensive sneakers explaining their disruptive AI solutions that were definitely not just chat bots with better marketing. Venture capitalists pretending to be interested while calculating ROI in their heads. Corporate recruiters with fake smiles and real desperation. And scattered throughout. Like glitter you can't quite get rid of, were the marketing people, Leia's tribe, armed with branded tote bags and the unwavering belief that visibility equals value. Leia was in her element, working the crowd like a politician at a fundraiser. She'd gone full power suit, navy blue, probably cost more than my monthly car payment, paired with heels that screamed, I'm important but approachable. She introduced me to exactly 3 people in the first hour, each time with the same script. This is my husband, Miles. He does tech stuff. Tech stuff. 3 years of marriage. And that's what she'd reduced my life's work to. Tech stuff. Like I was the Geek Squad guy who shows up to fix your router. But I played along, shook hands, made small talk, laughed at appropriate moments. The perfect supportive spouse who knew his place in the background of her professional achievements. Around 2 p.m. things got interesting. The main stage programming included something called Innovator Spotlights. Basically speed dating for entrepreneurs trying to get attention. Leia had convinced the organizers to include a segment called Lighter Moments in Tech where they'd bring up a few attendees and roast them good-naturedly about common tech struggles. I had a bad feeling about this immediately. Sure enough, during the networking lunch, sad sandwiches and sadder fruit cups, Leia pulled me aside with that smile that meant she'd done something she thought was clever. "So, I might have signed you up for the Lighter Moment segment," she said, already talking fast like she knew I'd object. "It'll be fun. They just ask a few questions. Everyone laughs. It's super casual. Plus, Graham thought it would be good for your visibility," Graham thought. Of course, he did. Graham probably thought public humiliation built character or some other corporate nonsense he'd read in a leadership book written by someone who'd never actually led anything. "I don't think, Miles, please, for me it's 5 minutes, you'll be great, and honestly it might actually help your business to get some exposure." The audacity, the sheer breathtaking audacity of thinking my business needed exposure from her PR stunt. But I agreed because at this point I was committed to the role, the humble husband, the guy who didn't know his company was about to make him richer than everyone in this room combined. The spotlight segment happened at 3 p.m. They brought up 5 of us, me, 2 other entrepreneurs, and a couple of tech employees who'd been voluntold by their companies. The host was some local comedian who did corporate events. The kind of guy whose entire personality was relatable observational humor about Wi-Fi passwords. He started with softball questions for the others. Funny stories about coding disasters, embarrassing client meetings, the usual crowd pleasers. Then he got to me and Miles Carter. "Miles, what do you do?" "I run a cybersecurity company called Lockwave Systems," I said into the microphone. Professional, clear, exactly what I'd rehearsed. Lockwave? That's a great name. Very secure sounding. "So, what's it like running a tech startup in this economy?" Before I could answer, before I could say literally anything, Leia's voice cut through from the front row where she was standing with Graham and her team. "Oh, you should ask him about his laptop," she called out, laughing. "Miles, tell them about your lucky laptop." The audience chuckled, sensing entertainment. The host's eyes lit up because nothing saves a mediocre comedy set like unexpected material. "Lucky laptop," he prompted. I hesitated, but Leia was already committed to the bit. She grabbed a microphone from somewhere because of course she did and addressed the crowd directly. "Everyone, I should explain. My husband has this ancient laptop he refuses to upgrade. Like this thing is probably running Windows Vista. He's convinced it's lucky that all his best ideas come from this old dinosaur machine." She paused for effect, working the room. "I keep telling him, honey, maybe it's time to upgrade your equipment and your expectations. But he still believes his little operation is going to change the world." The crowd ate it up. Laughter rolled through the ballroom. Phones came out recording. I saw Graham in the front row grinning like this was the best entertainment he'd had all year. The host was practically crying with laughter. "Well, Miles," the host said, wiping his eyes. "What do you say to that?" I looked at Leia. Really looked at her. She was glowing with the attention, feeding off the crowd's energy, probably already planning how to spin this into some anecdote about authentic marketing or vulnerability in leadership or whatever buzzword would make her look good at the next team meeting. And I smiled. Not a big smile, just enough. "You know what?" I said into my microphone, voice steady. "She's absolutely right. I do still believe my old laptop can change the world." More laughter. Yaila beamed, thinking I was playing along. The host moved to wrap up the segment, ready to end on that perfect note of self-deprecating humor. But I wasn't done. In fact, I continued talking over the noise. "That laptop just helped me change it." The laughter faded to confused murmurs. Yaila's smile faltered slightly. The host looked at me, unsure if this was still part of the bit. "See that ancient laptop she's talking about? That's where I developed the quantum-resistant encryption protocols that are about to revolutionize digital security infrastructure for defense contractors across the Western Hemisphere. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy with the old computer." Dead silence. You could hear the air conditioning. Someone's phone notification went off, sounding absurdly loud. Yaila's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, realization, anger, and something that might have been fear. "Actually," I said, checking my watch with theatrical precision. If you'll excuse me, I have a meeting. Funny story, it's in this exact building, conference room 12B. I'm selling that little operation my wife mentioned. Should be wrapping up the final signatures in about 20 minutes. I stepped off the stage, handed the microphone back to a stunt production assistant, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Nobody knew whether to clap, laugh, or check their phones to see if I was lying. Graham's face had gone pale. Leia stood frozen, microphone still in her hand, looking like someone had just explained quantum physics using only interpretive dance. I paused at the door, turned back, and gave a little wave. Thanks for the exposure, babe. Super helpful. Conference room 12B was on the third floor, tucked away in the VIP section where actual business happened instead of performative networking. Elaine Porter was already there with her legal team. 3 lawyers who looked like they billed by the Nankind and 1 financial advisor who'd probably forgotten what normal people's bank accounts looked like. Mr. Carter, Elaine said, standing to shake my hand. She was mid-50s, sharp as a tack with the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without realizing it. Ready to make history? Ready to make $173 million? I said, the history part is just a bonus, she laughed. We sat. The lawyers pushed papers across the table. I signed and signed and signed some more. Each signature felt like deleting a part of my old life and installing an upgrade. Every page brought me closer to a reality where Ila's opinion of my business was not only wrong, but spectacularly, cosmically, catastrophically wrong. Congratulations, Mr. Carter. Elaine said 40 minutes later, shaking my hand again. You've just revolutionized digital encryption. IronGate is proud to bring Lockwave into our portfolio. Thanks, I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though my hands were shaking slightly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a comedy show to get back to. My wife's performing tonight, and I'd hate to miss the finale. I walked back downstairs. The expo was still in full swing, but there was a weird energy now. People kept glancing at me, whispering. Word had clearly spread. In the age of social media, you can't drop a bomb like that without it detonating across every group chat and Slack channel in the building. I found Leia in a corner with Graham, their heads together in urgent conversation. When she saw me, she marched over, heels clicking like gunshots. What the hell was that? She hissed, keeping her voice low enough that nearby people had to strain to eavesdrop. That I smiled. That was me not embarrassing you. You wanted visibility, right? I'd say we're both pretty visible now. Did you really? Did you actually sell my company for $173 million? I finished. Yeah, signed the papers about 15 minutes ago. IronGate Security. Great people. You should network with them since you're so good at that. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like a fish trying to understand calculus. Graham appeared at her elbow, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the last hour. Miles, perhaps we should talk about this privately. Why? I asked innocently. I thought we were all about public visibility and authentic vulnerability. Besides, I have nothing to hide. Unlike some people, I let that land, watched them exchange glances, then turned to leave. Miles, wait, Leia started. See you at home, I said over my shoulder. Or not. I'm flexible these days. I walked out of Tech Connect Expo with my hands in my pockets and my head high, leaving behind a ballroom full of people frantically Google searching my name and finding exactly what I wanted them to find. The sad husband with the failing business. He just left the building and the guy who replaced him was just getting started. The thing about watching a marriage implode in real time is that you'd expect fireworks, screaming, maybe some dramatic plate throwing like in the movies. But when Ila came home that night after the expo disaster, it was worse than that. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before a tornado touches down when the air pressure changes and every animal with survival instincts runs for cover. I was on the couch with a beer. Nothing fancy, just a regular Corona. Because suddenly being able to afford Dom Perignon doesn't mean you instantly develop taste for it. Scrolling through my phone and watching the Tech Connect footage go viral across LinkedIn and Twitter. Someone had titled it Tech Husband's Revenge and it already had like 2 million views. The comments were pure gold. My man really said I'll wait. One read another. She roasted a medium rare and he came back with a flamethrower. My personal favorite homegirl fumbled a $173 million bag for a dude named Graham. The door opened around 11 p.m. Leia walked in still wearing her power suit, but she looked like she'd been through a war zone. Makeup smudged, hair disheveled, that shell-shocked expression people get when their entire worldview collapses in the span of an afternoon. She dropped her bag on the floor, designer, probably cost $2,000, now just lying there like abandoned luggage, and stared at me. I took a sip of my beer, waited. I learned in business that whoever speaks first loses the negotiation. And this was definitely a negotiation, just one where I held all the cards and she was sitting there with a pair of twos, wondering how the game had changed. Is it true? She finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. Is what true? I took another sip, playing dumb because why not? I played dumb for 3 years while she emotionally cheated her way up the corporate ladder. Fair's fair, Miles, don't. She stopped, recalibrated. When she spoke again, her voice had that edge it got when she was trying to be strategic, trying to manage a situation the way she managed campaigns and client relationships. The sale, Iron Gate, the money, all of it. Is it real or were you just trying to humiliate me? I laughed. Actually laughed and she flinched like I'd slapped her. Humiliate you? Ela, I literally just sat there and took it while you turned our marriage into a comedy routine for your boss's entertainment. Again, I just corrected the record. If the truth is humiliating, maybe examine why that is. She moved toward the kitchen, probably needing something stronger than water, which made sense because I'd probably need whiskey, too, if I'd just publicly obliterated my marriage while trying to mock my husband. She poured herself wine. The expensive stuff she kept for special occasions, though apparently emotionally devastating realizations qualified. When did this happen? She asked, back still turned. When did you sell the company? Today. Signed the final papers at 3:47 p.m. while you were probably doing damage control with Graham and trying to figure out how to spin the fact that your husband just became more successful in 20 minutes than you'll be in your entire career. Low blow. Maybe deserved. Absolutely. She turned around, wine glass gripped so tight I thought it might shatter. You lied to me. You've been lying for months. I didn't lie. I corrected. I just didn't share. There's a difference. You never asked about my business except to mock it. You never showed interest except to compare it unfavorably to Graham's opinions. Why would I tell you anything when you made it crystal clear you thought I was a failure? I never said you were a failure. You didn't have to say it, Leia. You said it with every eye roll, every comparison to Graham. Every late-night strategy call where you laughed at his jokes while treating our marriage like an inconvenient afternoon meeting you could reschedule. You said it loud and clear without using the actual words. She slumped against the counter, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. For a second, just a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the charity gala, the expo, the countless small humiliations she'd served up with a smile, and the sympathy evaporated like water on hot pavement. What happens now? She asked quietly. Well, I said, finishing my beer and setting it down with deliberate care. I guess that depends on what you want, doesn't it? She looked up at me, and I saw something flicker across her face. Calculation. She was doing math, running scenarios, figuring out angles. The marketing brain never turns off, even when your marriage is actively disintegrating. We could work this out, she said. Voice shifting into something softer, more vulnerable. The voice she used to use when we first dated back when she wanted something from me instead of just wanting me to be less of a disappointment. Miles, I know I've been distant. Work has been crazy. And Graham, he's just a colleague. You know that. I got caught up in the pressure and I lost sight of us. But we could fix this. We could be amazing together now that the business stress is gone. And there it was, the pivot, the realization that maybe the guy she'd been planning to leave for her boss was actually the winning lottery ticket she'd been about to throw away. You could practically see the strategy forming behind her eyes, how to salvage this, how to reframe the narrative, how to stay married to the multimillionaire instead of running off with middle management Graham. I stood up slowly, walked to where she was standing, close enough to smell her perfume. Still that expensive one Graham's wife supposedly recommended. Still not the jasmine I used to love. Layla, I said gently. You were already planning to leave me. Don't pretend otherwise. I know about the apartment viewings in Graham's building. I know about the joint checking account you opened with him last month that you thought I wouldn't find out about. I know you've been strategizing your exit for weeks, waiting for the right moment to announce you were moving on to someone who inspires you or whatever corporate therapy speak you'd workshopped with your life coach. Her face went pale. The wine glass trembled. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out because what could she say? I just laid out her entire plan like reading from a script she thought she'd kept hidden. So, here's what's going to happen. I continued, voice still calm, still reasonable, because getting emotional now would be giving her ammunition, and I was way past that. You're going to leave. You're going to move in with Graham like you already planned. You can take the furniture, the car, whatever you want from this apartment. I honestly don't care about any of it anymore. Miles, please. I'm not finished. I held up a hand. You can take whatever you want from our life together because none of it matters. It's all stuff from when I was the guy you're embarrassed by. I'm not that guy anymore. And I don't need reminders of who I was when I thought this marriage was salvageable. She was crying now. Real tears. Not the strategic kind she could turn on for client presentations. You're really going to throw away 3 years of marriage? Me? I laughed again, but this time it was bitter. Leah, you threw it away months ago when you decided Graham's validation mattered more than your husband's dignity. I'm just acknowledging reality and moving on. Something you've been planning to do anyway, except now I'm doing it first and you're mad because the math changed. What about the money? She asked. And there it was. The real question, the bottom line. Always the bottom line with Leah. What about it? We're married. That means you should talk to a good lawyer. I interrupted. Henry Wolf can probably recommend someone though, given he's been my lawyer for 6 years and helped structure the Lockwave sale to be completely separate from marital assets. You might want someone else. Someone who specializes in helping people who made catastrophically bad decisions and need to minimize the damage. Her tears stopped. Just stopped like someone flipped a switch. You planned this. You've been planning this. I protected myself. I corrected. There's a difference. You decided I wasn't worth your respect or fidelity. I decided my life's work wasn't going to fund your exit strategy with your boss. We both made choices, Leah. Mine just worked out better. Henry had been right when he said she'd go from loving wife to legal adversary in record time. I could see it happening in real time, watching her face shift from vulnerable to calculating to cold. The marketing executive came back online assessing, strategizing, figuring out how to spin this into something she could work with. I'll call a lawyer tomorrow, she said, voice flat now. All emotion packed away like files in a cabinet. Probably smart, I agreed. I want the apartment. Take it. I'll be out by the end of the week. The car, too? Sure. It's in your name anyway. She blinked, surprised I wasn't fighting. But why would I fight? Why would I argue over an apartment I'd been planning to leave in a car that was 3 years old when I could buy a dealership if I wanted to? Let her have the remnants of our life together. Let her sit in this apartment and drive that car and remember every single day that she traded a fortune for a middle manager who smelled like expensive cologne and poor judgment. That's it, she asked. You're just giving me everything. Not everything, I said. Just the stuff that doesn't matter. The stuff you can see and touch and convince yourself means you want something. You can tell Graham you took me to the cleaners. Got everything in the divorce. Whatever helps you sleep at night. I grabbed my phone and wallet, headed toward the door. I get some clothes tomorrow when she was at work, but right now I needed to be anywhere but here. Breathing air that didn't smell like failure and regret and expensive perfume chosen by someone else's wife. Where are you going? She called after me. I stopped at the door, hand on the knob, and turned back one last time. She looked small suddenly, standing in that big kitchen in her power suit with her wine, looking like someone who'd just realized they'd miscalculated something fundamental. Honestly, no idea. Hotel, maybe. Henry's couch if he's feeling generous. Anywhere that isn't here watching you pretend you didn't blow up our marriage because you thought you were trading up. Miles, don't. I said quietly. Don't try to make this something it isn't. You made your choice months ago. I just made mine tonight. The only difference is I have $173 million to make the transition easier. And you have Graham. I hope he's worth it, Leah. I really do. I walked out, closing the door softly behind me because slamming it would have been too dramatic, and honestly, she didn't deserve the emphasis. As I rode the elevator down, I pulled out my phone and texted Henry. She's all yours tomorrow. Keep the scorched earth policy in the holster unless she starts something. His response came back immediately. Divorce lawyer roulette is my favorite game. Get some sleep, rich boy. Tomorrow we make this official and you start your actual life. I stepped out into the parking garage into air that smelled like oil and concrete and possibility. And I smiled. Not a bitter smile or an angry smile. Just a real smile. The smile of someone who'd finally stopped carrying weight that was never his to carry. Some people chase revenge, I muttered to myself, walking toward my old Honda that Leah would probably repo by morning. I prefer dividends, but first, I preferred a hotel room service, and sleep that didn't involve listening for my wife's phone to buzz with messages from her boss. The rest could wait until morning. The Riverside Hotel wasn't fancy, but it had clean sheets and didn't ask questions when you showed up at midnight with no luggage and paid cash for a week. The kind of place where the night clerk had seen everything and cared about nothing except whether your credit card cleared. I tipped him $100 just because I could, watched his eyebrows shoot up, and took my key to room 412. I slept better that night than I had in 6 months. No Lila on her phone, no passive-aggressive sighs, no pretending everything was fine while my marriage rotted from the inside out. Just me, a decent mattress, and the white noise of the AC unit that probably hadn't been serviced since the Clinton administration. Morning came with texts 17 from Leia ranging from "we need to talk" to "you're being childish" to "I deserve half of everything." You backstabbing. The progression from conciliatory to furious took about 45 minutes according to the timestamps. I deleted them all without responding because what was there to say? She'd figure it out when her lawyer called Henry and got laughed off the phone. Henry texted around 9. She hired Vanessa Clean. Buckle up. This is going to be entertaining. Vanessa Clean was infamous in Austin legal circles. Shark in a pencil skirt. Made her career destroying cheating husbands and bleeding them dry in divorce court. She was expensive, ruthless, and apparently Leia's first call, which told me everything about where her head was at. Not grief, not reconciliation, pure calculated warfare. Good. I was ready for war. I'd been preparing for it while she was busy planning her exit strategy with Graham. I spent that morning at a coffee shop doing something I should have done years ago. Thinking about what I actually wanted, not what Leia wanted, not what success was supposed to look like, just what Miles Carter, newly single and obscenely wealthy, actually gave a damn about. The answer surprised me. I wanted to keep working. Not because I needed money. I had enough to retire at 32 and spend the rest of my life on a beach somewhere drinking drinks with umbrellas, but because Lockwave wasn't just a paycheck. It was proof that the stuff in my head, the weird encryption obsessions and security protocols actually mattered. And selling to IronGate didn't end that story. It just opened a new chapter. I called Elaine Porter that afternoon from my hotel room, looking out at Austin traffic and feeling lighter than I had in years. "Miles," she answered, voice warm. "How's it feel to be independently wealthy?" "Honestly, weird. Listen, I've been thinking about the transition plan. You mentioned wanting me to consult for 6 months, help integrate the Lockwave systems into your infrastructure. That's right, though it's optional. You've earned the right to disappear if you want. What if I didn't want to consult?" I said, "What if I wanted to build something new under the IronGate umbrella, but something fresh? Take everything I learned from Lockwave and apply it to the next problem." Silence. Not the bad kind, the thinking kind. "What problem?" she finally asked. "Quantum computing is coming. Maybe 5 years, maybe 10, but it's coming. And when it does, every encryption system we currently use becomes toilet paper. I want to build quantum-resistant infrastructure before the quantum computers arrive. Not react to the threat. Prevent it." More silence. "Then how much are we talking?" "Initial funding. 20 million. Staff of 15. Mix of cryptographers and engineers. Office space in Austin because I'm not moving to the Bay Area and pretending overpriced avocado toast is culture. 3-year timeline to viable product. And what do you want from IronGate besides funding, access to your government contracts, your client base, your reputation? I bring the tech and the vision. You bring the credibility and the connections. We split ownership 60-40 my favor and I run it independently with quarterly check-ins." She laughed. "You just made $173 million and you're already pitching me for more funding. I like it. Send me a proposal detailed. I want to see exactly what you're building before I write that check. You'll have it by Friday." I promised. "Miles, one more thing. Whatever's happening in your personal life and the internet tells me it's messy. Keep it separate from this. I don't care who you're divorcing or why. I care about results. Understood? And Elaine, thanks for taking a chance on the guy working in his garage. That guy made me a fortune and solved problems nobody else could solve. I'll take that chance every time." I hung up and immediately opened my laptop. If I was doing this, building a new company from scratch, I needed people, not just any people. The right people who understood that the real work wasn't about getting rich. It was about being right. First call, Marcus Chun, my original Lockwave hire. The kid who'd worked for Equity and Pizza when we were too broke to offer actual salaries. "Marcus, it's Miles. Dude, I saw the Tech Connect video. That was legendary. Your wife's face when you ex-wife soon. Listen, I'm starting something new. Quantum-resistant encryption. Ground floor opportunity. You interested? What's the pay? $200,000 base plus equity in the new company. Full benefits, reasonable hours because I'm not trying to kill anyone with burnout and a signing bonus that'll cover whatever student loans you're still carrying." Pause. "When do I start?" "Monday. I'll send details." Next call. Tara Vega. We met at a cybersecurity conference where she'd presented research on cryptographic vulnerabilities that made half the audience uncomfortable and the other half take notes. She was brilliant, abrasive, and exactly the kind of person who'd tell me when my ideas were stupid instead of just agreeing because I was the boss. This is Tara. Hi, this is Miles Carter. We met at DEF CON 2 years ago. You called my presentation adequate but unimaginative. She laughed. I remember. You didn't cry or threaten to sue me, which put you in the top 10% of male egos I've encountered. What do you want? I'm building a quantum-resistant encryption company. I need someone to tell me when I'm wrong and build systems I'm too stupid to imagine. You want in? What's the catch? No catch. Competitive salary, equity, interesting problems, and I promise not to be the kind of boss who thinks work-life balance is a myth perpetuated by lazy millennials. I'm a lazy millennial. Perfect. You'll fit right in. Send me the details. If it's not, I'll consider it. By the end of the week, I had a team, 15 people, mix of experienced engineers and hungry recent grads who understood that joining a startup funded by IronGate with a proven founder was basically hitting the career lottery. We signed a lease on office space in East Austin, the kind of renovated warehouse with exposed brick and terrible parking that screams tech startup without being obnoxiously Silicon Valley about it. Henry called Friday afternoon while I was reviewing contractor bids for the office build-out. So, Vanessa Klein finally called me. He said, voice dripping with amusement. That was the most fun I've had in court filing since the Johnson case where the husband tried to hide assets in his mistress's dog's name. What did she say? She's demanding half of everything. The Lockwave sale, the new company, your future earnings, your retirement accounts, probably your kidneys. If she thought she could get a judge to sign off. Standard scorched earth strategy. And what did you say? I sent her the timeline. Every patent filed before the separation. Every corporate structure established while you were still married, but she was too busy with Graham to notice. Every piece of documentation proving the IronGate sale was your separate property. Then I attached the photos. I grinned. You used the photos. Oh, I used the photos. Graham and Leia having their professional lunch at that Italian place. Timestamps showing it was during work hours, multiple occasions, always just the two of them. Her car parked at his apartment building overnight. Nothing explicit enough to be revenge porn. Everything explicit enough to establish a pattern of behavior that legally qualifies as marital misconduct. How'd she take it? There was silence. Long silence. Then Vanessa said, and I quote, I need to speak with my client about realistic expectations, which is lawyer speak for, your client is screwed, and I need to figure out how to break that to her without getting fired. So, we're looking at what? Standard no-fault divorce with asset division based on what we brought in. Exactly. She keeps the apartment because it's in her name and you've already moved out. She keeps the car. You keep everything related to Lockwave, the IronGate money, and the new company. Split the minor shared accounts down the middle, which amounts to maybe 30 grand done by Christmas. If nobody gets stupid, and if she gets stupid, Henry's voice turned cold, then I bury her. I've got documentation of the corporate espionage attempt when Graham tried to access your Lockwave servers using her credentials. That's not just divorce court material. That's potential criminal charges. But I'd rather not go nuclear if we don't have to. Agreed. Let's give her the easy out. I don't want revenge. I want this over. You're a better man than me, Henry said. I'd want to watch her squirm. I'm watching her squirm just fine from a distance. She's about to realize she traded a multimillionaire for a guy whose wife is probably filing her own divorce papers right about now based on those photos. Henry laughed. True. By the way, Graham's firm is apparently conducting an internal review of his conduct. Turns out having an affair with a subordinate spouse while using company resources to help access competitor systems is frowned upon, even in marketing. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. We hung up. I sat in my hotel room. I'd upgraded to a suite because why not, and looked at my laptop screen. The Carter Quantum Systems logo was still placeholder quality, just text on a white background. But beneath it was a roster of brilliant people, a business plan that would revolutionize digital security and funding from one of the biggest defense contractors in the world. 6 months ago, I was the guy Leia mocked at charity galas. The dreamer working in a garage while his wife fell in love with her boss's validation. The husband who wasn't enough, wasn't successful enough, wasn't Graham enough. Now I was the guy building the future of encryption with a team who actually respected the work. The guy who turned humiliation into motivation and betrayal into fuel. The guy who'd proven that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just being right. My phone buzz. Tara bossman chill. I just reviewed your quantum lattice proposal. It's actually not terrible. We should probably hire someone smarter than both of us, though. I know a guy from MIT who's obsessed with this stuff. I typed back, Hire him and stop calling me boss man, chill. Never going to happen, BC. See you Monday. I smiled, closed my laptop, and ordered room service. Not because I couldn't afford a nice restaurant, but because sitting alone in a hotel suite, eating a burger and fries while building a company worth potentially billions, was somehow more satisfying than any 5-star meal I could have had with Leia. Funny how perspective changes everything. 6 months is apparently how long it takes for reality to fully sink in when you've made catastrophically bad life decisions. For me, those 6 months were productive as hell. Carter Quantum Systems went from concept to functioning company with actual government contracts and a waiting list of clients who wanted quantum-resistant encryption before quantum computers made their current security systems about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. For Leia, those 6 months were apparently spent in denial, bargaining, and finally rage when Forbes published an article titled "The Quiet Cybersecurity Millionaire." How Miles Carter reinvented digital security while everyone was looking the other way. The article was fair, factual, and featured a photo of me in our new office looking significantly less pathetic than the guy she'd mocked at the charity gala. They interviewed Elaine Porter, who said nice things about vision and innovation. They quoted Tara, who called me annoyingly competent for someone who codes in hoodies. They mentioned the Irongate sale, the new company, and estimated my net worth somewhere north of $200 million when you factored in equity and future projections. What they didn't mention was Leia. Not once. She'd been erased from my success story completely, which I'm sure burned worse than any direct insult could have. Henry called me at the office on a Tuesday morning, voice tight with barely contained glee. "So, remember how we had that nice, clean divorce settlement all ready to go? Simple split. Nobody gets nuclear. Everyone moves on with their lives." "Yeah," I said, already knowing this wasn't going to be good news about that plan. "Leia just filed a motion to reopen the case. She's claiming you hid assets, engaged in fraud, and deceived her about the true value of your business holdings during the marriage. Vanessa Klein is going full scorched earth." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at my team working in the open office space. Marcus was arguing with another engineer about lattice-based cryptography. Tara was on a call, probably telling some potential client exactly why their current security was garbage. This was my life now. Building things that mattered with people who gave a damn. "Let me guess," I said. "She saw the Forbes article." "Bingo. And apparently Graham's wife divorced him. He lost his job. And Leia's been unemployed for 4 months because her reputation in Austin marketing circles is radioactive. She's desperate, broke, and convinced that you owe her half of everything because she was supportive during the difficult early years. She was supportive right up until she decided I was embarrassing and started planning her exit with her boss." "How supportive?" "Preaching to the choir, buddy. Anyway, we've got a court date in 3 weeks. Judge Morrison presiding. And before you ask, yes, she's seen some and no, she doesn't suffer fools. This should be entertaining." The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in legal warfare. Vanessa Klein filed motion after motion, each one more desperate than the last. She demanded access to all my financial records, which Henry provided with timestamps proving every major transaction happened after the separation. She claimed I'd been planning the divorce while secretly building wealth, which we countered with my detailed documentation, showing I'd only protected assets after Ila's affair became obvious. The chess match was beautiful in its precision. Every move Vanessa made, Henry had anticipated. Every claim she filed, we had evidence to refute. It was like watching someone play poker when you could see their cards and they didn't know you had cameras on the table. Court day arrived with that particular Austin weather that can't decide if it's spring or summer. So it just does both simultaneously and makes everyone miserable. I showed up in a suit, actual nice suit this time, tailored because looking like you have money is important when you're defending how much money you have. Henry met me on the courthouse steps looking like a lawyer who'd been waiting his whole career for this exact case. "Remember," he said, "let me do the talking. You're calm, factual, and slightly disappointed that it came to this. You're not angry. You're not vindictive. You're just a guy who built something and wants to move on. Got it. I'm the reasonable one." "Exactly. She's going to be emotional. Let her be emotional. Judges hate emotional." We walked into the courtroom and there she was, Leia, sitting next to Vanessa Klein at the plaintiff's table, looking like she'd aged 5 years and 6 months. The power suits were gone, replaced with something more: wronged wife seeking justice, which was probably Vanessa's strategy. Graham was there, too, sitting in the gallery like moral support, which was either brave or stupid, given he was part of why we were here. Judge Morrison entered and everyone stood. She was exactly what you'd hope for in a judge. 60-some, zero patience for eyes that said she'd seen every trick in the book and had written a few chapters herself. "Be seated," she said, voice carrying authority like some people carry designer handbags. Miss Clean, you filed this motion. Make your case. Vanessa stood smooth and professional, laying out her argument like she was selling a product. Leah had been a supportive spouse during the marriage. She'd sacrificed her own career advancement to support Miles's dreams. She'd been his partner, his cheerleader, his foundation. And Miles had repaid that loyalty by hiding the true value of his business, structuring the sale to Irongate in secret and deceiving her about their financial situation to avoid his marital obligations. It was a good performance. Very standing by her man until he stabbed her in the back. The kind of narrative that plays well on TV and occasionally in courtrooms if you don't have evidence. Unfortunately for Vanessa, we had all the evidence. Henry stood when it was our turn and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. Your Honor, this case is simple. Mr. Carter built a business before, during, and after his marriage. He filed patents, developed technology, and ultimately sold that technology to Irongate Security. All of this is documented with timestamps, filing dates, and corporate records that show exactly when everything happened. He pulled up the first exhibit on the courtroom screen. Patent filings all dated and timestamped. Corporate structure documents showing when Lockwave was moved to the offshore trust. After Leah's affair became apparent, email records showing my communication with Irongate, starting negotiations after the separation. Everything Mr. Carter did was legal, ethical, and properly documented. Henry continued. The sale to Irongate was finalized after the couple had separated. The new company, Carter Quantum Systems, was founded after separation. There was no hidden wealth because there was no wealth to hide during the marriage. Vanessa objected. Your Honor, the technology that became valuable was developed during the marriage using marital resources. Marital resources? Henry interrupted. You mean the garage that Mr. Carter rented separately, paid for separately, and worked in separately while Mrs. Carter was advancing her own career? Your Honor, we have documentation showing Mrs. Carter contributed nothing to Lockwave Systems. No capital, no labor, no intellectual property. She wasn't even aware of half the work Mr. Carter was doing because she was too busy with her career and her extramarital affair. Objection. Vanessa shot up. There's no proof of but there is. Henry smiled, and I knew this was the moment he'd been waiting for. Exhibit F, Your Honor. Photographs, time-stamped, and geotagged, showing Mrs. Carter and her supervisor Graham Steele at various restaurants, hotels, and his apartment. Phone records showing calls lasting hours, primarily late at night. And most damning, email evidence showing Mr. Steele attempted to access Mr. Carter's company servers using Mrs. Carter's credentials in what appears to be corporate espionage. The courtroom went silent. Even Judge Morrison looked surprised, which probably took some doing given her experience. Leah's face went white. Graham, sitting in the gallery, looked like he was calculating how fast he could get to the exit. Vanessa's jaw actually dropped for a second before she recovered her professional composure. Your Honor, Henry continued, voice now gentle like he was explaining something to a child. Mrs. Carter didn't leave Mr. Carter because he was unsuccessful. She left because she thought he was unsuccessful. She was planning her exit with Mr. Steele, preparing to file for divorce and take what she assumed would be half of nothing. The only reason we're here today is because she miscalculated dramatically and is now experiencing what we call in legal terms buyer's remorse. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Miss Clean, do you have evidence to refute any of this? Vanessa looked at Leah, who was staring at the table like it might offer an escape route. Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess, too. No. Judge Morrison's voice was flat. I've seen enough. This case is dismissed. With prejudice, Your Honor, Vanessa tried. With prejudice, Miss Clean, that means it's over. Mrs. Carter has no claim to assets acquired after separation. The original divorce settlement stands. Furthermore, I'm awarding Mr. Carter legal fees because this was clearly a frivolous attempt to renegotiate a settlement that was already more than fair. She banged her gavel. We're done here. Both parties are divorced as of today. Move on with your lives. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Lala looked like she might cry or throw up or both. Graham was already heading for the exit, probably calculating his own legal exposure from the corporate espionage mansion. Vanessa was packing her briefcase with the efficiency of someone who wanted to be literally anywhere else. Henry leaned over to me. That might be the fastest I've ever seen Morrison shut down a case. She was offended you even had to be here. How much are the legal fees? I asked for this circus. I'm billing Leah about 60 grand, which she doesn't have, so she'll probably be paying that off for the next decade. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, maybe even a little smug. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the fighting, Tired of being reminded that I'd wasted 3 years of my life with someone who valued me less than her career prospects. Leia caught my eye as we were leaving. She looked broken in a way that would have killed me 6 months ago. Now, it just made me sad. Miles, she said quietly. Vanessa having abandoned her to deal with reporters outside. LLA, I'm sorry for all of it. I thought I don't know what I thought. You thought I was your backup plan until something better came along. Then something better didn't come along, so you wanted the backup plan back. I get it. That's not. She stopped. Okay, maybe that's exactly it. The settlement stands. I said, you keep the apartment, the car, and whatever dignity you can salvage from this. I keep everything else. We're done. Yila, actually done this time. I know. She looked down. For what it's worth, I really did love you. Once. Yeah. I said, heading for the exit where Henry was waiting. Once was a long time ago. Outside, the Austin sun was bright enough to hurt. Henry clapped me on the shoulder. Congratulations. You're officially divorced and significantly richer than you were this morning, thanks to legal fees. Best money I ever spent. Wanna grab lunch? Celebrate your freedom. Can't. We have a client meeting at 2 and Tara will murder me if I'm late. He laughed. Look at you. Already moved on. This is beautiful. I got in my car, new car, nothing flashy, just reliable and mine. And drove back to the office. My phone buzzed with messages. Marcus, how'd it go? Tara, please tell me you destroyed her. My mom, proud of you, sweetie. Call when you can. I texted back. All good. See you at the office. Because that was the truth. It was all good. Not perfect, not triumphant, just good. The marriage was over. The lawsuit was done. Leia and Graham could figure out their own disasters without me. I had quantum-resistant encryption to build and a future that didn't include anyone who thought I was their consolation prize. And honestly, that felt like winning enough. Turns out when you publicly humiliate someone who then tries to sue you and loses spectacularly, the internet has opinions. Lots of opinions. Most of them involving popcorn emojis and variations of "she really fumbled the bag." The Forbes article was just the beginning. Within 2 weeks of the court case, I'd been profiled in TechCrunch, interviewed by Bloomberg about the future of quantum-resistant encryption, and somehow ended up on a podcast called Startup Stories, where the host spent 20 minutes trying to get me to trash talk Hila before realizing I genuinely didn't care anymore. So, no hard feelings? The host asked, clearly disappointed. Hard feelings require feelings, I said. I'm too busy building the future of digital security to worry about the past. It became a soundbite, memes, t-shirts on Etsy that said, too busy building the future with my face photoshopped onto various superhero bodies, which was simultaneously flattering and deeply weird. But the real fallout wasn't online. It was local, personal, and honestly more satisfying than any viral moment. Graham's company didn't just fire him. They publicly announced an internal investigation into ethical violations and misuse of corporate resources. His LinkedIn went dark, his Twitter protected. Last I heard through Austin's surprisingly efficient gossip network, he was working sales for a mid-tier software company in Dallas, making a third of what he used to and driving a Kia. Karma uses express delivery now. Must have got Prime. Leia's situation was worse. Austin's marketing world is small and everyone talks. Word spread fast about the lawsuit, the affair, the corporate espionage attempt. Companies that might have hired her suddenly had budget constraints or different directions for the role. Her LinkedIn showed she'd taken a position as marketing consultant, which everyone knows is code for unemployed, but pretending. I didn't celebrate it, didn't post about it, or gloat. Honestly, I felt nothing, which was probably the healthiest sign that I'd actually moved on. Carter Quantum Systems, meanwhile, was thriving. We landed a Department of Defense contract worth $40 million over 3 years. NASA called about securing their satellite communications, banks, hospitals, government agencies. Everyone suddenly realized that quantum computers weren't science fiction anymore, and their current security was about to become obsolete. I moved out of the hotel and bought a ranch property outside Austin. Nothing crazy. 30 acres, main house, guest house, horses. I had no idea how to care for, but figured I'd learn. It was quiet, private, mine. Tara became CTO officially, which she celebrated by immediately instituting No Fridays, where we banned all meetings and just coded. Marcus led our cryptography division and started publishing research papers that other companies cited like scripture. We hired recent grads from state schools instead of just rating MIT and Stanford, giving opportunities to kids who reminded me of garage dwelling me. Henry finally bought his dream boat 40-foot yacht he named Alimony Express because subtlety was never his strong suit. He invited me sailing one weekend, got drunk on champagne, and toasted to women who think they're trading up but are actually trading down into a dumpster fire of their own creation. That's oddly specific. I said, I've been divorced twice, Miles. I know from dumpster fires. The texts from Leia started around month 8. Not frequent, just occasional messages that all said basically the same thing. She was sorry. She'd made mistakes. Could we talk? I never responded. Not out of cruelty, just because there was nothing to talk about. That chapter was closed, published, and already being adapted into a cautionary tale for marketing conferences. Then month 9, she called. Actual phone call, which was bold given I had ignored 17 texts. I answered on the third ring, standing on my porch, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky colors that reminded me why I love this state. Miles, she said, voice cracking. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. You remember that night you mocked my business at the charity gala? I asked, silence. Then I do. Well, I said, smiling despite myself. Turns out my little business bought your old company last week. IronGate acquired them as part of expanding our market share. So, technically, you work for me again. Small world, huh? She gasped. Actually gasped. You're joking. Relax. I'm kidding. I wouldn't hire you to refill the coffee machine, but I did buy the company. That part's true. Your old boss is now reporting to my VP of operations. Life's funny like that. Miles, I got to go. Yila, horses need feeding, and I've got a video call with the Pentagon in an hour. Take care of yourself. I hung up, blocked the number, walked back inside my house that smelled like coffee and possibility instead of regret and expensive perfume. My phone buzzed. Tara, boss man, chill, stop ignoring my texts. The lattice algorithm works. We just solved the problem everyone said was impossible. Get back here Monday. We're celebrating. I typed back. Told you to stop calling me that, but yeah, I'll be there. This is huge. Huge doesn't cover it, BC. We just changed the game again. I poured myself a bourbon. Good stuff now because I could afford it. And sat on my porch watching the stars come out. Somewhere in Austin, Leia was probably checking LinkedIn, seeing the acquisition news, doing math she should have done a year ago. Somewhere else, Graham was probably explaining to his Kyo why life was unfair. And here I was building things that mattered. Working with people who respected the work, living in a place where the only drama was whether the horses preferred apples or carrots. Some people chase revenge. Some people chase money. Some people chase validation from others. I preferred dividends and solving impossible problems. And knowing that every time someone Googled my name, they found exactly what I wanted them to find. Proof that underestimating people is expensive and betting against the quiet ones is how you end up broke and bitter while they're changing the world. The Texas night was clear and cool. My bourbon was smooth. My company was revolutionizing digital security. My ex-wife was someone else's problem now. I raised my glass to the empty sky. To the dreamers they laughed at, I said to nobody. May we always have the last laugh. 3 years post-divorce, Carter Quantum Systems wasn't just successful, it was inevitable. The kind of company people studied in business schools with case titles like Strategic Timing and Market Disruption or How One Garage Startup Rewrote Cybersecurity. We'd gone from 15 employees to 200. Our quantum-resistant encryption was now standard for 70% of US government communications and spreading internationally faster than conspiracy theories on social media. The valuation hit $2.3 billion after our Series C funding, which meant my personal net worth had crossed in a territory where financial advisors started using phrases like generational wealth and legacy planning. I was 35 and had more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. So, I started giving it away. Not all of it. I'm not insane, but enough to matter. I established the Carter Foundation with a $50 million endowment focused on tech education for underfunded schools. We built computer labs in rural Texas districts where STEM education meant one ancient desktop in the library, funded full-ride scholarships for kids who showed promise, but had bank accounts that showed poverty. The applications that came through broke my heart and rebuilt it simultaneously. Kids coding on phones because they couldn't afford laptops. Teenagers teaching themselves encryption theory from YouTube videos. First-generation college students who reminded me of garage-dwelling Miles. Convinced their weird obsessions could matter if someone just gave them a chance. I heard a bunch of them. Not out of charity, out of strategy. These kids were hungry in ways Ivy League graduates had forgotten how to be. They didn't want cushy jobs. They wanted to prove everyone who doubted them catastrophically wrong. I understood that motivation intimately. Terra ran operations like a benevolent dictator, instituting policies that made us the kind of company people bragged about working for. Unlimited PTO that people actually used. Mental health days without questions. Salaries that let people buy houses instead of just dreaming about them. Parental leave that didn't destroy careers. Profit sharing that meant when the company won, everyone won. You know you're ruining capitalism, right? Henry joked during one of our quarterly bourbon sessions on my porch. I'm fixing capitalism. I corrected. Turns out when you treat people like humans instead of resources, they build better products and don't leave for competitors. Military contracts kept rolling in. We secured communications for embassies, protected financial transactions for the Federal Reserve, encrypted medical records for the Virginia. Every contract felt like validation, not of my bank account, but of those nights in the garage when everyone thought I was wasting my time. Tech magazines called me for quotes. Conference organizers offered keynote slots. Universities wanted me on advisory boards. I said yes to the things that mattered and no to everything designed to feed ego instead of impact. When asked about motivation during a Bloomberg interview, I kept it simple. My wife called me a failure. Turns out I'm allergic to being wrong. The clip went viral again because apparently my origin story of spite and vindication resonated with every person who'd ever been underestimated. But the real legacy wasn't the money or the company or even the technology. It was the email I got from a kid named Jesse Rodriguez, recipient of our first scholarship, now a junior cryptographer on our team. Mr. Carter, I grew up in a town where people thought computers were for rich kids and dreamers. Your scholarship didn't just pay for college. It proved my parents weren't crazy for believing in me. It showed my teachers that the weird kid doing math problems for fun could actually matter. I'm not just working here. I'm building the future because you built a bridge for people like me. Thank you. I read it 3 times. Saved it, printed it, and put it on my office wall next to the Forbes cover. That mattered more than any court victory or viral moment or watching Leia's career implode. Because pain built focus, and betrayal built discipline, but purpose built legacy. And my legacy wasn't going to be the guy whose wife left him. It was going to be the guy who changed cybersecurity and then opened doors for everyone who'd been told their dreams were too big for their circumstances. Some people build empires to prove they're worthy. I built mine to prove that worthiness was never the question. Opportunity was. And now I had enough success to create opportunities for everyone who reminded me of the guy working in his garage while the world counted him out. That guy won. And now he was making sure other versions of that guy could win, too. 5 years after the divorce, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail. Usually, unknown numbers meant either spam about my car's extended warranty or reporters asking the same tired questions about triumph over adversity. But something made me answer. Maybe curiosity, maybe boredom, maybe the universe's sense of timing. Miles, the voice was familiar in that way that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. It's Leia. I stood on my ranch porch, coffee in hand, watching morning fog roll across the pasture. 5 years. She'd been a ghost for 5 years. And now, suddenly, she was a phone call. How'd you get this number? I asked, not unkindly. Just curious. I've been trying to reach you. I know you blocked me. I understand why. I needed to talk to you to apologize. Really? Apologize? Not the half-assed attempts from before. I sipped my coffee, said nothing. Let the silence stretch. I've been in therapy, she continued, words tumbling out like she'd rehearsed this. Dealing with a lot of stuff. My therapist says I need to make amends. And Miles, I'm so sorry for the gala. For Graham, for not seeing what I had until it was gone. For treating you like you were my backup plan instead of my partner. You deserved better. I did. I agreed simply. I've been following your success. The company, the foundation, everything you've built. It's incredible. You were always capable of this. And I was too blind and selfish to see it. You remember that night you mocked my business at the charity gala? I asked, God, Miles, every day? It haunts me. Well, turns out my little business just got acquired by Google for $4.2 billion. Announced yesterday. So technically your old marketing firm, the one you're consulting for now, according to LinkedIn, they're going to be pitching campaigns to my division next quarter. Funny how things work out. Silence. Long heavy silence. You're joking about the acquisition. No. About you pitching to my division also. No. Life's hilarious like that. Miles ILYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYLYL. I appreciate the apology. I do. Therapy is good. Self-awareness is healthy. I'm genuinely glad you're working on yourself. I'm in it, too. No sarcasm, no edge, just truth. But here's the thing. I don't need your apology anymore. I needed it 5 years ago. Now, I'm good. Really, genuinely good. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. This isn't about forgiveness. I interrupted gently. I forgave you years ago because holding grudges is exhausting and I had better things to do. This is about relevance. You're not relevant to my life anymore, Leia. Not in anger, not in regret, not even in vindication. You're just someone I used to know. Her breathing was shaky. I miss you. I miss us. The real us before everything got complicated. That us never existed, I said, watching a hawk circle over the field. You loved the idea of me until reality didn't match your ambitions. I loved the idea of you until I realized you loved validation more than partnership. We were never the people we thought we were together. So that's it. 5 years of marriage, just nothing. Not nothing. A chapter. One that taught me what I don't want and showed me what I'm capable of. I learned from it, grew from it, and moved on. You should, too. I don't know how to move on from this. Start by stopping calling ex-husbands looking for closure. Closure comes from inside, not from the people who watched you self-destruct. I finished my coffee. Take care of yourself, Leia. Really? I hope you find whatever you're looking for, but you won't find it here. Miles, goodbye, Leia. I hung up, blocked the number again, walked back inside where my calendar showed meetings with Pentagon officials, a foundation scholarship ceremony, and dinner plans with Terrara's team to celebrate our latest patent approval. My phone buzzed. Henry, saw the Google News. You magnificent bastard. Drinks tonight. Me can't Pentagon briefing and scholarship event tomorrow. Henry, you're living the dream and I'm insanely jealous. Tomorrow works. I poured another coffee, opened my laptop, reviewed the day's agenda. Somewhere in Austin, Leia was probably processing that conversation, maybe crying, maybe angry, maybe finally understanding that some bridges don't just burn, they get demolished and replaced with superhighways going the opposite direction. And here I was, not bitter, not triumphant, just busy building things that mattered with people who got it. I glanced at Jesse Rodriguez's email, still pinned on my wall. Read the last line again. I'm not just working here. I'm building the future. Yeah, kid. We all are. Some people chase revenge. Some chase redemption. Some chase closure from people who can't give it. I chased problems worth solving and let everything else fade into background noise that couldn't touch me anymore. The Texas morning was clear and beautiful. My coffee was perfect. My company had just made me a billionaire several times over. My ex-wife was someone else's cautionary.